Battlefield 6 was a smash hit when it launched in October 2025, and it ended up being the best-selling game of that entire year. For a franchise known for always playing second fiddle to Call of Duty when it comes to popularity and units sold, this was a major success for publisher EA and the Battlefield Studios development teams that worked on it. However, since that high-profile launch, things have been far from perfect. I still enjoy playing the game, and clearly many others do too, but it's hard to ignore the loss of players that the game has experienced over the last several weeks. It's now a near 80% drop in player numbers on Steam compared to its all-time peak. And when you consider that Battlefield 6 also launched a massive free-to-play Battle Royale add-on during that launch period as well, it's clear there's a problem when it comes to keeping players engaged with this game. We don't have numbers for other console platforms or marketplaces on PC, but if the Steam numbers have dwindled in this way, then I think it's safe to assume that we're going to see a similar trend with other platforms as well. So today, I want to talk about why I think Battlefield 6 is currently failing to retain players, and whether, with some tweaks and changes, things could be turned around. It is worth mentioning that despite this seemingly massive drop in player numbers, they are still pretty good numbers for a Battlefield game. It always tends to have this landslide drop a few months after launch, but I think it's indicative of the team currently falling into the same traps that they have with previous titles. And considering just how insanely popular Battlefield 6 was back in the summer of 2025 with the open beta, and then again with the launch in October, it's certainly a situation that will be concerning to the management at EA. I want to see Battlefield succeed long term, and I think Battlefield 6 has the components to do so, but right now, things aren't going so well. And here's what I think the team needs to do to turn the ship around. First of all, I think we need to talk about the gameplay. We've got this extreme sway towards infantry-based combat with Battlefield 6, and the rest of the game just feels very shallow because of it. Right now, the game features fairly small maps for a Battlefield title that seem to be designed around keeping up the engagement rate, reducing the downtime as much as possible, and trying to keep players involved in the action. That doesn't leave much room for vehicle combat, for example, a core pillar of Battlefield gameplay. The vehicle experience in Battlefield 6 is pretty poor, and it needs a lot of work to bring it up to par with past titles that have executed it very well. Battlefield 4 is probably the best example here. The smaller maps, whilst highlighting how good Battlefield 6's infantry gameplay can be, it just leaves little room for anything else, and it's actively contributed to the lessening of the sandbox feeling that Battlefield is famous for. That rock, paper, scissors mentality, where any weapon, any vehicle, or gadget can be thrown into the mix and make for some pretty epic moments. The maps are small, there's less room for player freedom, there's less vehicle intensity, there's less incentive for players to change their playstyle and try different things, and so the gameplay just ends up feeling very samey, very shallow, despite there being 11 different maps in the game at this point. So to solve this, I think the map design needs to be separated from this seeming obsession of having a short engagement time. This means we need bigger maps. Battlefield is and has always been a large-scale team-based shooter where most of the maps allow for all the different elements of gameplay to mix together, with just a couple of the maps then focusing more on infantry gameplay. In Battlefield 6, it's the other way around. Basically, all the maps focus on infantry gameplay, and just a couple of them allow for further gameplay opportunities and other elements to emerge. And of course, it doesn't help that the current vehicle gameplay loop in Battlefield 6 has very little depth to it. It's a really lackluster experience. Helicopters feel like glass cannons in the sky, they're far too easily taken out by infantry on the ground, they're not well equipped to deal with the overwhelming presence of infantry on the maps that they're placed on. Just look at Eastwood as an example. So this could be solved not only by applying some resources to properly balancing ground versus air gameplay, but also increasing the size of the maps, as we've already mentioned. Jets have absolutely zero loadout customization to them at all, compared to previous titles like Battlefield 4, which had a whole setup ready to go at launch. This leads to extremely sterile, boring jet gameplay that plays out the same way, just time after time. If you want more info on that, go and watch one of Silk's videos about jet gameplay. He's an insanely good pilot, but I know he's very disappointed with how shallow the gameplay is with them. Next, I want to focus on content specifically, and with that, we need to talk about the live service so far. Since launch, Battlefield 6 hasn't delivered enough new content to keep me engaged consistently. Over the Christmas period, I usually take 2 weeks off and I try and relax a little bit. I didn't play Battlefield 6 even once because I'd already played everything that this season has had to offer so far. The 2 maps that we got, Blackwell Fields and Eastwood, both of those also just continued to deliver the same experience with the maps that we got at launch, as opposed to introducing new experiences and different types of gameplay. And 2 maps per season, I'm sorry, that's just not enough. Previous Battlefield games used the Season Pass model. I know that's different, but that's the comparison that we've got. They delivered 4 maps per DLC, with each DLC being delivered every 3 months. By the looks of things, Battlefield 6's live service seasons will be nearly 3 months long each, and we're getting half the maps that we used to get with older Battlefield titles. One of the biggest reasons that I loved Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 so much was that I knew that every 3 months I'd get 4 brand new maps delivered to the game that I could hop into, I could experience the gameplay with, explore all the different locations, and just have cool moments in playing Battlefield. This game is all about the locations, the maps, the biomes that you're fighting in, so moving forward, Battlefield 6 needs to be delivering more maps on a more consistent basis that offer fresh gameplay experiences. I think every season for Battlefield 6, we should be getting at least 3 maps, and ideally, it should be 4 maps per season. And then let's talk about the weaponry that you're taking into those new maps. Weapons, gadgets, attachments, vehicles, grenades, throwables, melee weapons, and even more. Those tools that you bring into each match, they can have a huge impact on the experience that you have. And by delivering these new toys, these new weapons to play with regularly, you're going to create different opportunities and scenarios within the gameplay loop. That keeps things fresh and interesting. Battlefield 6's first season delivered just 3 primary weapons, 2 secondaries, and a transport vehicle that you can only use on the 2 new maps, rather than it being added to the base game maps to increase gameplay variety. That, for me, that's disappointing. Previous Battlefield games have added up to 10 primary weapons in a DLC drop, and that gave players almost an entirely new arsenal of equipment to experience the game with. They'd learn the ins and outs with those weapons, and they'd create cool new moments with them. So moving forwards into Season 2 and beyond, Battlefield 6 needs to deliver a lot more weapons and equipment for players to use. And to link into my initial point about the game feeling far too infantry-focused, we also need to see the team introduce lots of new types of vehicles as well, to give players fresh vehicle opportunities. Now, there are rumours that we'll be seeing the Little Bird added with Season 2, so that's good news, but the game needs a fair amount more than that to keep people happy. And something just to tack on here, I think the team at Battlefield Studios made a strategic decision with the seasons for this game to try and fluff them out by adding limited time game modes and events instead of offering another new map, and I think that was a big mistake. These limited time game modes like Sabotage, no one is going to remember those the moment they disappear. And with the huge elephant in the room of Portal and the content creating power that that has, why is the team spending time making cheap game modes and modifiers when they could instead be taking a cool opportunity or a cool creation from Portal, from the community, verifying it and hosting it as part of these events instead? I think resources could be spent far more efficiently than they currently are when it comes to the live service. And despite Battlefield 6 Season 1 seemingly having a lot going on with limited time game modes, extra cosmetic unlocks, the redressing of the Empire State map, when you kind of strip it all back, none of that engages people long term. They're all short term hits, or misses, as the case appears to be at the moment. I've just mentioned Portal in my previous point, so let's bring it up here. Portal and the server browser. I've said this all before, but I think it's worth continuing to highlight just how poorly this has all been handled and give my opinion on how best to fix the issues that are present. Battlefield 6 having matchmaking as its main driver for getting players into matches, that's absolutely fine. But by giving people the option of a server browser, the game has one, it's right there, that comes with certain expectations that right now Battlefield 6 is not fulfilling. Previous Battlefield games hosted the quick play, official, persistent servers directly in the server browser, as well as having them behind matchmaking functions, allowing players to choose how they wanted to get into a match. So by using matchmaking, you get thrown in pretty quickly, and you could start playing the game, but you'd get very little choice outside of the game mode. So if you just wanted to play, you could use matchmaking. But by using the server browser, you'd be able to guarantee what map you wanted, what game mode, what region, so on and so forth. Loads more options. You'd be able to coordinate with larger groups and use the browser to all join the same server and play together. This is not something you can do in Battlefield 6 because the game refuses to host the official quick play servers in the server browser. You can only join those via matchmaking. Also, official servers in Battlefield 6, via matchmaking, they're not persistent. They spin down and spin up after every single match, meaning you're not able to guarantee playing with or against the same players match after match, and the map rotation isn't set either. Previous Battlefield titles that had these official servers in the browser, they often had a stronger sense of community as well, because certain players would congregate in specific servers at specific times, and in less populated regions, it was kind of vital to use the server browser to fill up matches to the max and then experience the game to the full. It allowed communities to grow. It gave them a way to either maintain or grow the group that they like to play with, and it created different experiences within the server browser with different rules and modifiers that the community wanted in their servers. And then there's Portal, which despite all the feedback before launch has been completely mishandled once again. It's arguably in a worse state than it was in Battlefield 2042, because this time around, it has infinitely more potential, but the team didn't seem to learn from any of the mistakes that it made in the past. It's still being used as an XP bot farm, although with significantly less presence of that, since the team took that firm stance that they should have taken at launch to stamp them all out. And there's so many cool experiences in there, custom maps and minigames, but they're all being lost or ignored because of the limited XP issue and the terrible visibility of all of them. Right now, Portal feels like another massive missed opportunity because there's no visibility of the cool creations being made by players, and only just now, in the last couple of weeks, have the devs finally started to feature them properly in the menus. However, I think the team needs to go a lot further, with not only featuring the experiences, but go ahead and verify them and activate full XP on them and host them directly, and then use them as additional content for Battlefield 6. There's a lot of cool custom maps in there that players have made that would be perfect to be hosted by the devs directly, set up as an additional map in the matchmaking, and be utilized, especially when perhaps there's a week or two in the season that doesn't have much happening in it. Use that space in the calendar to really push community-made experiences. That would only encourage more and more people to put action on their ideas, create them properly, have them hosted in the Portal browser to be found. Maybe that could become the next verified experience at the top of the menus. The team handling Portal, I think they really need to get a grip on what they've got here and start pushing it really hard, because it's arguably the part of Battlefield 6 with the greatest potential, and it's being completely wasted at the moment. Next, I want to touch on a few missing elements from Battlefield 6 that I think would really increase the feeling of teamwork and community in the game. First of all, there's no platoons feature or any kind of social feature in the menus. There's no way to get into the same game via matchmaking with more than 4 players. So I'm talking about bigger groups of players, they can't really play together. You can do it via the Portal server browser if you can find a server that's populated enough, but trying to do that is like navigating a maze at night with a blindfold on. It's really not intuitive to use. The game feels quite sterile and unwelcoming for larger groups of players who want to play together, and considering Battlefield has always prided itself on being a large-scale team play shooter that actively encourages you to work with your squad, this feels quite backwards to me. There's also no proximity chat in Battlefield 6. That's a feature that games right across the spectrum have been adopting over the past few years to kind of introduce more social interaction and add an additional layer to gameplay. Now, Call of Duty really hit a home run with this, adding proximity chat to Warzone back in 2022, and that essentially kept that game alive and added a new dynamic to gameplay. Battlefield 6 with proximity chat, it would probably be chaos, but the potential for 64 players all screaming at each other would be pretty cool, and in many cases it would actually help boost the team play present in the game. Right now, it feels like this Battlefield game has the least amount of teamwork in it ever, so anything they can do to increase teamwork and communication would be pretty good. Also, can we please add back the request command feature from the squad leader in Battlefield 6? Battlefield 4 had this, Battlefield 1 had this and did it really well, where if you request a command from the squad leader in your squad, it would then prompt the squad leader to guide the squad towards an objective and maybe attack one or defend one. And if the squad leader ignored the request, then after 60 seconds, command of the squad would go over to the person who asked for the request, giving them squad lead, and that would allow them to take control of the squad and help your team in a wider fight. I don't know why it's not in the game. It kind of feels like it should be, but it's not there. So if you could get that in, that'd be awesome. Next, I want to talk about the progression in the game, because I think the team has really messed up here, despite the fact that they've already implemented a fix for it. I don't think it actually really fixes much at all. I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding between what the team thinks people want to grind for and get that sense of achievement by unlocking something hard to get. But I think what they've actually done is just locked a lot of the core basic items and equipment behind that very same grind. Items that in some cases are fundamental to how something works. And the weapon progression system is the best example here. Attachments are spread right across all the different ranks in the game. That's pretty standard for most shooters, but there's also a bunch of different weapon camos that you can unlock for all the different weapons across the game, but those are randomly placed at different weapon levels for all the different weapons as well. So you have to grind weapons not only to get the camos, but you have to grind to get your basic attachments as well. And that grind is pretty severe. I think you need over 1,000 kills on weapons to get to level 50, which means even after a few hundred kills with your favorite weapon, you're nowhere near getting all the attachments for it. Now multiply that by 50 or 60 weapons in the game, and that's just a completely unrealistic amount of time to expect for someone to put in just to get the basic stuff. I'm not even talking about all the different camos here. So I think a fundamental overhaul of the weapon and vehicle progression system is needed for Battlefield 6. I think you should be front-loading all of the attachments into the first 25 levels, having the most expensive and statistic-altering attachments right at the top of those 25 levels. So from like 21 to 25, put the best attachments right at the end, and have all the basic stuff from levels 1 to 20, and then have each weapon have its own camo grind from level 25 onwards, just unlocking individual camos for each weapon that you can obtain, rather than the camos being universal and then applied to every single gun. This would create a much cleaner progression path for each weapon and vehicle in the game, and it would solve the issue of attachments still not being unlocked unless you pump like 1,000 kills into the weapon. We've got to talk about the Battlefield 6 menus again. They're just a disaster. There's too much on the screen all at once. I think that's been done to give the image that the game is just stuffed with content, when actually it's kind of lacking and it needs more content. So just shove more tiles on the screen and people might forget that there's not actually that much happening, kind of thing. The menus literally feel like somebody copied Modern Warfare 2 from 4 years ago, even though that menu at that time was almost universally blasted and disliked, so I have no idea why Battlefield Studios decided to do the same thing. This needs to be simplified, and it needs to be scaled down. Please, just stop with all this horizontal scrolling, make the tiles a bit smaller, and just use text. Not every single thing in the menu needs to be a picture. And can we please consider renaming the Community tab to Portal? Since it's actually called Portal, and using a different word is confusing, and it leads people to not know where to look for stuff. Also, settings menu. A search function in there would be amazing, so I don't have to click through 17 submenus to try and find what I'm looking for. I'm going to touch on the cosmetics in the game now. So far, I've kind of been fine with what they've been putting in the Battle Pass and having available to purchase in the store. I think the style is okay. It's not 100% the direction I hope they'd go in, but it's not ridiculous either, so I'm kind of okay with it. There have been some issues, though. The bright green Razor outfit and that weird blue mask guy. Both of those did get toned down, though, so that is a nice response from the developers. But recently, we've seen some AI slop make its way into the game, and that's really disappointing. Over the holidays, a paid bundle in the store appears to be selling players an AI-generated sticker called Winter Warning. 2 muzzles on the assault rifle there. That's just an instant bad look. It seems as though the statement made by Battlefield Studios leadership before the launch of the game that players wouldn't see anything AI-generated make it into the game has now been passed up here. Whether that's by mistake, like the cosmetics not being properly checked by a human before being put on sale, or on purpose, and the team has now decided to let AI cosmetics be sold. Frankly, that doesn't matter to me. This is just a bad look for Battlefield 6, quite honestly. And it's already elicited a pretty strong negative reaction on social media over the holidays. And I wouldn't be surprised if that alone now sticks in the mind of gamers from now on. Battlefield 6 uses AI cosmetics. It's still available to purchase as well, by the way, despite the backlash. There's also been further scandal recently with the introduction of the Battlefield Pro bonus path, which has a final unlock skin called Objective Ace, and it appears to either be taking heavy inspiration from or is outright copying the Call of Duty Ghost logo with the mask. It's basically the same thing. So again, whether this is a coincidence, whether it's a mistake, or whether it's been done on purpose, I don't think it really matters. It's another stick to beat the game with. So I think moving forward, the use of AI cosmetics in Battlefield 6, that should be stopped instantly. And perhaps a fair bit more reviewing and checking needs to be done of items before they go live in the store, especially when additional purchases in a premium $70 title already create such a debate anyway. Then the netcode and latency in multiplayer, it's getting pretty bad at the moment. Quite a lot of instances now where I'm dying very clearly around corners or behind cover. Bullets that I fire go missing and result in no hit reg. Enemies killing me in one bullet, or all of the damage being loaded into a super bullet, delivered at once and killing me in one frame. Third-person player animations not lining up with first-person perspectives. So you've got enemies on your screen that aren't looking at you, but their guns firing and you're taking damage from them. All of it is getting quite annoying. I've seen a fair few comments on social media before the holidays from developers saying they are working on this, but it's something that really needs to be sorted ASAP. It's all about kind of like fair play in multiplayer. And I know latency will never be 0 milliseconds. You'll never make it, so there's no delay unless you're playing on LAN. But Battlefield 6's netcode has degraded since the game launched, and it needs to be better. And then there's REDSEC. I'm not going to touch on this for too long, as I think others are in a better place to explain how to make it better than I am, but I will point out why I don't, and I think many others have already stopped playing it. First, I don't think it was actually ready to go live. It wasn't ready to be released. It felt ropey on the first few days that it came out, but I was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt because, like, you know, first few days, server problems, hit reg felt bad, maybe the servers were getting hammered or whatever. But the situation didn't improve for like a couple of weeks. And by the time an update landed to fix the hit reg and the latency, I'd kind of already stopped playing at that point. I don't actually think the match flow is very good. There's huge periods of downtime between gunfights. The tanks are stupidly overpowered and don't actually add much into the gameplay loop. The missions are really, really basic, like a toddler could complete them. And the endings of the matches are basically devoid of any tension because the circles are far too large and players are far too spread out because the pacing is too slow. And I think also, as a free-to-play offering, it's massively missed the mark. Looting for weapons that you want to rank up is kind of painful, and the process of them progressing those weapons, something we've already touched on in this video, is far too slow. So it doesn't do a good job at incentivizing players to stick around and keep playing REDSEC. Had it been given more time in development, say another 6 months from launch, and then been dropped in March 2026 at the beginning of a new season, a big marketing push, perhaps it would have made more of an impact. But right now, REDSEC is basically dead on arrival. And that huge Elite Series marketing campaign, that fell flat on its face before Christmas. It's been indefinitely postponed. It's really not a good look for the game. For me, I'd actually leave the mode live for people to play if they do like it, but I'd kind of like just not update it at all for like 4 or 5 months or whatever. Do a load of work in the background on REDSEC, and then do a massive relaunch with Season 3 or something. Mid-2026, loads of fanfare, put some marketing budget behind it, really listen to players, and implement those big changes and fixes, and just try again. You know, I'm actually really sad that I've had to make this video, because Battlefield 6 showed so much promise in that open beta. That vertical slice of the game was really well polished, but that hasn't translated at all to the final product. I feel like this game is trying to do far too much at once, rather than focusing on what makes Battlefield great, and slightly adapting the formula to open the doors for new players who wouldn't have previously given Battlefield a look. Instead, we've now got a game that is spread way too thin, it's lacking a lot of depth, it's missing key ingredients to the regular Battlefield formula. So I kind of just wanted to give my opinion, and now I want you to give yours. So leave your opinions down below in the comments, whether you agree with me, whether you don't. If you've got other opinions that you want to bring up, please just put them down in the comments and maybe thumbs up some of the opinions that you agree with down there as well. Regardless, there's still a really good game under all of these problems that I've listed. Like I said at the beginning, I actually really enjoy playing Battlefield 6. It's just, there's some glaring problems that could be, well, I hope, quite easily fixed with it. And I feel like the team is making a lot of the similar mistakes they've made in the past as well. We have the blueprint on what not to do for Battlefield Live services, and I kind of feel like they're just doing the same thing they did before, instead of doing what players actually want them to do. So we'll see what they do in the future. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you soon.